Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Alan Rosen.
Welcome to CAD 134, Basic AutoCAD for Interior Design, in our weekly Zoom classroom meeting. Alrighty, so we've released Module 4. In Module 4, we're working on the hotel suite project. And in this project, we're to create a drawing using real-world applications. Resuming. So we're working on this hotel suite project, and in this hotel suite project, we'll continue this project throughout the course to create a floor plan of a hotel with a number of other attributes to it. As we take a look at this project, we can go to the content section. In our content section, we have released the Module 4. We have the floor plan drawing, and then we have a bonus drawing of a dresser from, it's actually a vanity from last chapter, from chapter 3. And so this is a great project. It's fairly straightforward as far as the detailing goes, and it will be used at some point later into the course. We have a video, and so here's the video for the Module 4. And in the video, we walk you through the basic construction processes. When I created this drawing, I tended to use lines instead of construction lines, but they really work very similarly. And so we'll kind of go through with some of Joe's techniques versus some of the textbook authors' techniques. But essentially, you start off by drawing this rectangular shape. You explode that rectangular shape, and then you offset the lines, and you create the geometry for this opening right here, for this window. You use trim commands to create this corner structure. And then we do the same thing on the other side of the room, where we'll go through and use trim commands and offset commands to create the basic floor plan. And they don't put all of the walls in this chapter. And so the way the textbook lays out this course is that we just draw the basic floor plan like this. You don't have to put in the dimensions. I put them in so that we can verify the dimensions. And then the bonus project would be an additional 3 points on top of the 30 points if you get full credit for the course assignment. Alrighty, back to content. Taking a look at our main splash page. Looking at our calendar, Module 3 is due on the 15th. And so that will be Friday, and that will be at 10 a.m. Yeah, let's push this to Sunday for the due date. Let me push that back just slightly. We'll update this when we get a minute. Right now, I'm having some difficulty with that, but typically we want to stay on top of our projects, and rather than have this project due on Friday, I'm going to push that back to Sunday. Al, can you update that for me? Can you update this to be due on Sunday? As we look at Module 3, in Module 3, we're creating these different elements for that hotel suite. And so there's a mirror exercise, there's a dresser, and then there's a bonus assignment for the luggage rack. As we go through and we look at the textbook, the hotel suite is basically going to have all of these furniture elements added to it as we go through the different chapters. We'll work on the bathroom and the bathroom fixtures, as well as the suite for the bedroom area as well. And so we're creating this drawing using real world applications. And we'll go through and add all these different elements to the drawing. Technical difficulties, it seems like it's just working on its own today. Let's add that again. So as we look at the hotel suite, we're going to work on this project. And after this initial Zoom video, we try to keep the first one short, which kind of recaps it. We'll go through the construction techniques in a virtual class setting. What we want to do is be able to start a new drawing. We're using the architectural title block. So when we look at things like units, what we can do when we come back to our drawing here, in model space, format, units. And I've got two monitors, so I'm just going to bring this onto the screen. When we work with units, it's important that we have the correct ones enabled. And so when you use the architectural title block, the units are set for architectural, which means that the measurements are made in feet and inches. And so when we input the distances for lines, if we wanted to put in this line at 36 feet, what we can do, I'll make this layer current. We can draw a line. We have our tracking on, and I can say 36 feet dash 8 dash 1/2. And that would be an architectural input. Now you don't have to put the inch mark because it's the default. And so as we create these line geometries, we want to use polar tracking. This is our polar button right here. And that will give us these green lines. And then we can go through and we can add these other elements. And so if I was to look at the length for this, let's just say it's 12 feet. I can go ahead and track that line to that angle. If I made it not vertical, I can go and put that in again and use an O snap. Notice that it grabs the end of it. And then I could type in 12 feet. Now, the author likes to use construction lines. And so as you go through, he's using these construction lines, which are really no different than regular lines, except they're infinite in length. And so what they're doing, and what I may not have done in some of the videos, was to use construction lines and just use regular lines. But it really makes no difference. And so if I were to make a construction line from this endpoint and I make it horizontal, the only difference is that it's infinite. And then I can go through and work on things like trimming, where I can trim those lines. So we checked our units. The zoom all command would be a command that we could use to check the entire display. And so we'll use zooming a lot as we go through and we create different geometries. So as we work with things, you want to be able to select your objects. I'm going to just erase those. And then as we zoom, we're using the wheel on the mouse. And then we push the wheel on the mouse for panning. There's a number of other zoom commands. If you look under view, zoom, number of different ones. But the best one is basically this real-time zoom and pan that we use with the mouse because it's kind of intuitive. Continuing. The rectangle command is just a way to create a polygon shape. And then what they do is they offset it and explode it. And so quite often the technique in the author's construction techniques would be to create a rectangle. And then a rectangle is a polygon. So if we, or a polyline. So if I click on that and I right click, you can look at the properties. You could look at regular properties. Quick properties just gives you a few of them. But essentially you can see what the color is, what the layer is, and other elements. You can see that it's a polyline. If you go through and you look at objects that you've created with the regular properties, let me bring this onto my screen. If you're using two screens, you have to check your screen to see if it is on the other screen for some of the other toolbars. What you can do is you can change more of the properties. Anything with a name, you can change. And so as you look at the properties here, I could change the color of that from bilayer to red. And what bilayer means is that it will take the same color as the layer versus when we override the color with properties. What we're doing is we're picking a color that's not bilayer. And so it will not be the same as the layer color. Alrighty. And so what he would do is to create these construction of these rectangles, and then he would explode them and then use the offset tool. And let's say we offset this 1 foot. And then you can do things like extending and trimming as we get better with our different AutoCAD commands. That would be an example of extending. You could also use grips. And so if we click on it, you get feedback on your grips, which will give you information like distances and angles. And then if you make that grip hot, meaning it changes to red, it's a nice smooth way to be able to change the drawing elements within the drawing. So we looked at the rectangle command, offset and explode, and construction lines, and they're using like construction line offset. So one of the options within construction line is offset. And again, it's very similar to just regular offset, just that the line is infinite. So that works the same. And we looked at trim and extend. One thing that you can do is you can repeat the last command by hitting the enter key or by right mouse clicking. And so as we look at our techniques and we get better with CAD, if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to move this, I could say move, I could select it, hit enter, or right mouse click, give it a base point, and then a destination point to move it. Notice that you can move it with polar and it stays lined up. This is also quite helpful. And then if I wanted to repeat the move command, I can either hit the enter key or just hit repeat move. And so it's very efficient when you start working with CAD and you start learning some of the, what they call syntax, which would be the way that you issue the different commands. So we went through and we've picked up on these different commands and techniques. And then as you go through and you work with the textbook exercise, eventually we'll make the floor plan look like this. And I can't turn this video, so we'll just have to work with it as it is right now. But right now, all we're doing is we're putting in this opening here for this window and for this door opening. We're creating the geometry for the walls, as well as this area right here for this window. That's it. In the next exercise, we'll go through and we'll continue working on that floor plan project. And so it takes you through some of the construction, which we'll go through after the video. Creating a rectangle at a specific shape, offsetting that rectangle to make the outside wall lines. This line here has a thicker exterior wall, and so they offset that 9 inches instead of 6 inches. And then we use the extend command and trim commands. And that's pretty much it. Offset, trim, extend to create the geometry. And this is a relatively short chapter. As we go through and take a look at it, here's the window opening on the left side of the room. And the construction for the door. Save the drawing. And that's it. There isn't any bonus exercises at the end of chapter 4. Chapter 5 is going to have a new project. And so when we look at this chapter next week, there's a number of different assignments that we'll take a look at. At the end of it, there's a conference room and a number of other details. So not to worry, there's plenty more work to do as you're thinking about what we'll be working on in the class. If we backtrack a little bit into next week's chapter, we'll be working with some other elements. And so the next week exercise will be to work on a conference room, as well as some of the furniture. Working with the arrays, polar and rectangular arrays to make copies. Alrighty, let's go back to the main splash page. The module 3 exercise was to create these other components for the furniture. We have the videos here. Here's the textbook lecture, the video for the mirror, the dresser, and the luggage rack bonus. We can check on YouTube, see that people are seeing those. Everybody seems to be following on that. And then as we go through and we look at module 4, we'll be working towards an exercise like this, where we'll create the elements for the floor plan. We'll continue to put in the other components for the walls, and then we'll make elevations for the furniture as we go through and continue to work on the projects. Alrighty, don't forget there are quizzes under quizzes and exams. And these are the same as the questions from the end of the chapter. So I've got a couple of students that are turning into questions from the end of the chapter as extra credit, and that's fine. But it's pretty much the same as taking the module quizzes. We don't put a due date on these. We just want you to finish them by the end of the course. And so make sure that you go through and answer the quiz questions at the end of the chapters. If we look at the quiz from chapter 3, if I view this as an instructor, and so we have 10 points per quiz. And so we don't put every question in there, but we'll choose 5 questions at 2 points each. How to use the rectangle command, knowledge about creating offsets, lengthen, extend, and trim. All righty, let's go back to the main splash page. So for this week, complete module 3. Module 3 is due. We're going to push this back to Sunday, the 15th at 12 p.m. And then module 3 is the exercise for the furniture. And then back to the main splash page. And then module 4 will be due. We've assigned it today in 2 weeks. And so module 4 will be due on the, we're going to make that the 24th, Al. All righty, with that, I'm going to stop the recording and open things up for questions.